Namo Namaha Bhaktam Sarvesham Hardam Swagatam. Welcome back to the channel Sanskrit Sopanam. I hope you are doing great. I'm also good. And moving ahead in our Learning Sanskrit through Gita series, today we'll be covering the 49th shloka from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And again, if you have seen the past two shlokas, then you already know the context. The context is same, the idea is same. Krishna is expounding on the philosophy of Karma Yoga, and under that philosophy, Krishna is telling us the right attitude with which we have to undertake any work and we have to perform any action. So again, the same ideas, the same philosophy that we are covering in the previous shlokas that we have seen in the previous shlokas, the same is continued here. So this all we will see in the shloka, and again, of course, all the grammatical points and all the vocabulary, everything will cover. So without wasting any more time, let's quickly dive in today's video. Okay, so this is the 49th shloka. Let me go through the shloka once. Durena hyavaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddhau sharanamanvichha kripanaha phala hetavaha. Okay, so here again we have the original shloka, the Moola shloka, and here of course is the Sandhi Vichcheda of the same shloka. So let us quickly spot all the Sandhis. So you see this pada, Hyavaram. So here you have two individual padas, He and Avaram. And what kind of Sandhi is this? So this is again the Yana Sandhi. Okay, in place of Ikara, you are getting the substitute of a Yakara of a Ya. So that is this Yana Sandhi, due to which He, Avaram, they combine as Hyavaram. That is what you see in the Moola shloka. And then again, if you move forward, so you see this Samyukta pada, Buddhi Yoga Dhananjaya. So here also we have two individual padas, Buddhi Yogat and Dhananjaya. And as you can see here in the Moola shloka, you have a Dakara in place of Takara. So this Ta to Da, this conversion we have seen so many times before. This is the Jashtva Sandhi that is happening. And again, under this Jashtva Sandhi, this instance where a Takara changes into Dakara, this is the most common instance of Jashtva Sandhi that we very frequently see in all these texts. So that is what is happening here. So Buddhi Yogat changing into Buddhi Yogad, and then combining with the this adjacent word Dhananjaya. So you have this Samyukta pada, Buddhi Yoga Dhananjaya. Okay, so only a couple of sandhis that we can spot in this shloka. Again, the sandhi niyamas and the word by word breakdown of this entire shloka is in the PDF sheet that you can download from the link in the description box. Now let us move on and start the decoding of the shloka. Okay, so again, to decode this first line of the shloka, I am assuming this implicit kriya pada asti. Okay, I have done this before, that when I am not able to spot any kriya pada, when there is no kriya pada or a kridanta that is available, so we can just start with this asti, that is. Okay, so what is it that Krishna is telling us? So, karma asti. And karma, as we have seen in the couple of previous shlokas also, comes from the pratipadika karman. It is a nakaranta napumsaklinga pratipadika. The meaning is action or work. And this form here is in the prathama vibhakti ekvachanam form. Because Krishna is talking about this. He is telling something as a fact about this karma. So that is the prathama vibhakti ekvachanam form. Okay, so karma asti. Action or work is, but again it is incomplete. So let me ask the question, kidrisham asti, that what is it that Krishna is trying to tell about this karma, about this action? And so Krishna says karma avaram asti, avaram. So avaram, this basically means inferior. Okay, so since we are using this avara to describe this karma, so it is again in the same neuter gender prathama vibhakti ekvachanam form. So avara also written as avaram. That is to say, karma avaram asti. The action, the karma is inferior. Okay, but along with this avaram, Krishna is also using durena. And this durena basically means by far. Okay, durena basically means in the sense of atyanta, that something in an exceeding quantity. So that is that durena. Okay, so in order to emphasize the magnitude of this avaram, Krishna is using this durena. Karma durena avaram asti. The karma is by far inferior. Okay, in that sense. And again, this durena, when used in this sense, by far, so you can take this as an indeclinable, as an avyaya. See, you can also think it coming from a pratipadika dura. Dura is something that is far, that is dura. And you can think of it as the tritiya vibhakti ekvachanam. So it is changing into a very familiar form, durena, tritiya vibhakti ekvachanam. And the tritiya vibhakti prayojana is by or with. So that is this keyword, no? That is for Tritiya Vibhakti, Prayojana. So when you see this word Durena as coming from Dura, Pratipadika and Tritiya Vibhakti Ekvachanam, then also the translation you can get is this only, by far. But again, when this Durena is used in this sense, by far, something in exceeding quantity, So you can consider this duren as the indeclinable, as an avyaya. That is what Sanskrit dictionary will tell you. Okay, so either ways you can understand this form, but the meaning is by far. Okay, so this is what we have so far. Karma durena avaram asti. But again, an obvious question will be kasmat. That this action, this karma is inferior, but inferior to what? Inferior in comparison to what? Okay, and whenever we have to show the comparison, we use Panchami Vibhakti. We have seen this thing before also. That the world with which something is being compared, that world is in Panchami Vibhakti. That is why I'm asking the Kasmat, the Panchami Vibhakti form. And the response also we get is in Panchami Vibhakti. Buddhi Yogat. Okay, that in comparison to this Buddhi Yoga, the karma is Durena Avaram. The karma is by far inferior. That is what we are getting. Let us see this pada Buddhi Yogat. Okay, so just by looking at this form, Buddhi Yogat, you can clearly make out two individual padas in this samasa. One is Buddhi, one is Yoga. Now, there are multiple ways to interpret this word, Buddhi Yoga. But anyways, let me present the couple of different ways you can understand this samasa Buddhi Yoga, which is being used in this current scenario. See, Buddhi, this word, this immediately means the intellect. Okay, the very common meaning of this buddhi is the intellect. And now, what is intellect if we try to understand? So, we can understand in this way. When we talk about manas, when we talk about mind, so what is mind? Mind is but the continuous flow of thoughts. The continuous flow of thoughts, that is mind. So, the flow of thoughts, when it is in a continuous state of flux, when it is in a continuous state of agitation, so that is the manas, that is the mind. But when the thoughts are are directional, when the thoughts are determined, when they are single pointed, when they are directional, then that becomes the intellect, that becomes the buddhi. That determined direction, that is that buddhi, that is that intellect. Okay, that is one way to understand buddhi. Now another way is that buddhi simply means wisdom. Buddhi means wisdom, buddhi means knowledge. Because starting from the 39th shloka, when Krishna says, Esha te abhiyata samkhye buddhir yoge. So in that particular shloka, 39th shloka, we interpreted buddhi as knowledge, as wisdom. So buddhi can not only mean this well-determined intellect, but it can also be interpreted as wisdom, as knowledge itself. That is that buddhi. Now coming to yoga, yoga we all know the one interpretation is path. Because when we say karma yoga, the path of action, Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion. So in all these contexts, we interpret yoga as the path. But very similar to this, yoga can also be interpreted as the technique or as the practical application of something. Because again, if we take the reference of again that same 39th shloka, so Esha te abhiyata samkhye buddhi yoge. So there Krishna says that whatever I have said, I have told you so far was from the point of view of the philosophy. But now I am going to tell you everything from the point of view of a practical application, of how you can apply it. So in that sense, this word yoga can be understood as the technique. Okay, as the technique or as the practical application of something. So given the couple of different ways we can interpret both these words, buddhi and yoga, one meaning of buddhi yoga can be the path of knowledge. Okay, it is simple to understand. Buddhi yoga very similar to what when we say jnana yoga, the path of knowledge, the path of wisdom. Basically, the path of true understanding, the path of proper understanding, the Jnana Yoga in that sense. And there can be another way to interpret Buddhi Yoga, and that can be the yoga in the sense of practical application, the technique, and Buddhi in the sense of intellect, that determined resolution. So, Buddhi Yoga in that sense can also mean a proper application of your viveka, a proper application of your discriminating intelligence, of your intellect. Okay, so either way you can interpret it, but still the overall impact is going to stay the same. And to understand this line correctly, we need to understand something, that this karma here is not just any action. This karma here specifically refers to an action which is guided by our egocentric attachments. So again, remember in the previous shloka, Krishna told us that yogastaha kuru karmani, that perform an action, perform a work after establishing yourself in the yoga. That is after establishing yourself in the true knowledge of how to perform a work. That when you have detached yourself from the result, when you have kept an even-minded, when you are even-minded in both success and failure, when you have satisfied these mental preparations, then you perform an action. So that is the proper karma. That is the correct action that needed to be performed. But this karma that is given in this shloka refers to the karma, the action or the work that we usually perform. The work that we perform is with a lot of egocentric attachments. So our entire focus when we perform any work is on the outcome, is on the result. And we are not at all even minded in success and failure. Success brings us joy, but failure, it brings us misery. So this work that is performed with so many egocentric attachments, this is the work, this is the karma that is being specifically spoken in the first line of the shloka. And then it will make sense, because now when we read it, karma buddhi yogat durena varam. So Krishna is saying that the action, that the work which is performed with those egocentric attachments, such kind of work is by far inferior to the one which is performed with the proper application of our viveka, or the one which is performed with the path of knowledge, with the true wisdom, with the true knowledge intact. Okay, so the comparison is being made between the work which is performed with all kinds of egocentric attachments and desires, and then there is work which is performed with a selfless attitude, without any attachment to the result or the outcome. So this selfish work and this selfless work. And of course, Krishna is telling that the selfish work with all those egocentric attachments, this work, this karma is by far inferior to the one which is performed with the correct knowledge. Okay, so I hope the meaning of these pada, this is clear. And again, the different kinds of interpretation that we can have for buddhi, yoga, and what is the true implied meaning behind this karma, all this is also clear. Okay, now with this, let us move on. Okay, so having told us this, that which kind of karma, which kind of action is better and which is inferior, having told us this, now he is telling Arjuna that anvichya. And anvichya, this basically means you seek, you must seek. And this kriya pada is coming from the dhatu ish dhatu. Ish dhatu means to desire, to wish in that sense. And the form here is the lot lakara, that is imperative mood. Again, lot lakara, the same we have seen in the previous shlokas also, because Krishna is right now in that teacher-student mode, that he is the teacher, he is the guide, and he is guiding Arjuna that you act like this, you do like this. So that is why this lot lakara, to give that sense of command, that sense of order that a teacher can give to a student. So that is why we are using lot lakara, madhyama purusha, because the action is attributed to Arjuna, who is the listener, and ekvachanam. Okay, so ish dhatu in these properties becomes ichha. And this ichha means you desire. Okay, you desire or you wish. But here we have this anu as the upsarga. Okay, so when we combine this anu upsarga also, again due to yana sandhi, this u is replaced by this vakara, this va. That is why you get this form anvichya. Okay, it is anu plus ichha only. Due to yana sandhi, the product becomes anvichya. Okay, and this anu, again, this upsarga adds the sense of following. Okay, so to follow with desire, to follow with that wish is to seek. That is why I've written this, I've interpreted this as you seek. Okay, so anvichya, this means you must seek. That is what Krishna is telling Arjuna. And so the question is, kim anvichya? So to that we get the response, sharanam anvichya. Sharanam, this of course, very simple to understand, identify, right? The pratipadika is sharana, and sharana means shelter. Sharana means refuge. Okay, since it is an object, is the karma of this kriya, so of course this is the dvitiya vibhakti, ekvachanam. So sharanam, that is what you see in the shloka. Okay, so Krishna is telling Arjuna to seek shelter. But the question is, seek shelter where? Kasyam sharanam anvichya. And he says, buddho sharanam anvichya. Buddho. This is coming from, again, the pratipadika buddhi. Okay, buddhi, this is the pratipadika. And since he wants to say, Krishna wants to say that seek shelter, seek refuge in buddhi. So in buddhi, we already know it is saptami vibhakti and singular, ekvachanam. So buddhi and ikaranta, feminine gender pratipadika. It is a strilingam pratipadika, ikaranta strilingam. So buddhi in saptami vibhakti ekvachanam becomes buddho. Okay, that is what you see in the shloka. Buddho sharanam anvichya. In the buddhi, you must seek refuge. And again, what is the meaning of buddhi? So as we discussed in the first part of the shloka, that this buddhi can be interpreted as the correct knowledge. This buddhi can be interpreted as the wisdom. So basically Krishna is saying that in this correct knowledge, in this wisdom of karma yoga, this is where you must seek your refuge. This is where you must establish yourself. So this buddhau sharanam anvichya, this is just reflecting what Krishna said in the previous shloka, that tvam yogastha. that you well established in the yoga. In the yoga of what? In the yoga of this karma yoga only. Because only when you are well established in this wisdom, only when you are yogastaha, then only karmani kuru. That is what he said in the previous shloka. Same thing is saying. He's trying to imply here that yogastaha kuru karmani. That once established in this true knowledge, then only perform an action. Because otherwise, the karma that we perform is always riddled with all kinds of anxieties and egocentric attachments to the outcome. And this karma, this kind of karma, as he already said in the first part of shloka, is durena varam, is by far inferior to when the work is performed, when you have the true knowledge, when you are well established in the wisdom of karma yoga. So all these things are tying up with that same message. Okay, so I hope all these padas are clear. And now comes the last part. And here Krishna is giving us a reason that why he wants us to be well established in the correct knowledge. Because he says, Phalhetavaha kripanaha santi. So see this phalhetavaha. This is coming from the Pratipadika Phalahetu. And this Pratipadika Phalahetu we have encountered in the 47th Shloka, Karmaniye Vadika Raste. In the second line he says, Ma bhuhu karma phalahetuhu. That do not become someone who is karma phalahetu. So what does this phalahetu means? Hetu basically means one who is motivated for, one who is propelled for the phala. So phala hetu basically means one who is motivated by the fruits of action. So that is phala hetu, or as used in the 47th shloka, karma phala hetu. That someone's whose hetu, someone's whose motive is the phala, is the outcome, is the result of the action. So someone who performs any work solely for the outcome of the action. So that kind of person is phala hetu. Okay, and this form phala hetavaha, so this is just the prathama vibhakti bahuvachanam form. Okay, just like any other ukarant padano guru. So guru becomes guravaha. So same way phala hetu, it is becoming phala hetavaha, prathama vibhakti bahuvachanam. And Krishna is saying phala hetavaha kripanaha santi. Kripanaha, he is using a strong word. Kripanaha is coming from the Pratipadika kripana. And kripana, this means someone who is miserable. This means someone who is pitiable. Someone who is in a sorry state, someone who is miserable. That is kripana. And Krishna is saying, phalhetavaha kripanaha santi. That the ones who are solely motivated by the fruits of action, they are miserable. They are pitiable. Okay, so this last statement, this is kind of a warning. This is kind of a warning given to us by Krishna. That is why he wants us to perform the work well established in the true knowledge, in the correct attitude of performing work. Because he's clearly telling us that all those who perform the work only for the fruits of action, they are going to always be kripanaha. They are always going to be miserable in a sorry state. Okay, so I hope these two padas are also clear. Now let us see the anvaya along with the anuvada. So in the shloka, Krishna says, Karma hi buddhi yoga durena avaramasti. That the karma, the action, but this is a specific kind of action. This is the action which is performed with egocentric attachments to the outcome. Okay, so karma hi, action thus performed with egocentric attachments to the outcome is indeed durena varam, is indeed far inferior to what? To buddhi yoga. That is why buddhi yogat. That such kind of action is indeed far inferior to the path of knowledge. That is to say, this egocentric action is far inferior to the action which is performed with the correct knowledge, with the correct attitude, with the proper application of the viveka, of the buddhi. And so Krishna says, Dhananjaya, O Arjuna, buddhao sharanam anvecha, that you must seek shelter in the correct knowledge. Buddhi refers to here as the wisdom, as the knowledge of this Karma Yoga philosophy. So Krishna is saying, buddhao sharanam anvecha, that you must seek shelter in the correct knowledge, that you must well establish yourself in this true knowledge. Yogastaha bhava. That is what Krishna is trying to say. And then he gives a rather harsh reality check also, that phalhetavaha vastutaha kripanaha santi. That you, Arjuna, must seek shelter in the correct knowledge because the ones who are motivated by the fruits of action, phalhetavaha, the ones who are motivated by the fruits of action are in fact miserable. They are in fact pitiable. Phalhetavaha vastutaha kripanaha santi. Okay, and this is the entire translation of the shloka. So I hope all the padas were clear. Since the padas in the shloka can be interpreted in different ways, that is why I dwelt a bit longer in those padas, trying to give the proper meaning within the context of the shloka, within the context of this continuous these dialogues that Krishna is right now giving, expounding on this karma yoga philosophy. So I hope all those implied sense they were clear. And again, the message is amply clear. What Krishna is trying to say. Krishna is trying to say that find the right attitude to undertake any work and to perform any work, because if we perform the work with the wrong attitude, with the wrong kind of attachment, then we are just going to be kripanaha. We are just going to stay miserable throughout our life. No matter how great a work, what we do, no matter how big a post, how big a level, how much growth we see in our life, we are still going to remain miserable and pitiable. As long as we keep this unhygienic, this wrong attitude of performing any work. And what's the right attitude? He's giving us in all these verses, he's giving us and giving us examples also. He's giving us reality checks also. What more he can give? It's now onto us that we have to find this right attitude with which to undertake and perform any work. So that is what Krishna is telling us also. All these philosophies, everything, the main point of these philosophies is not to understand, but to imply, but to apply them in our day-to-day life. Okay, the philosophy is just nonsense talks if it is not applied in our day-to-day life. So that is what we have to try to do. Okay, so I hope all these things are clear. Again, Sanskrit, all these padas, everything, it is in the PDF sheet. In case I have missed out anything, I'll meet you in another video, in another shloka. Until then, stay awesome, stay happy, keep learning Sanskrit. Vayam punah milamaha. Dhanyavad.